the member for Moranni.
Oh, thank you. Queenslanders have now endured 2 straight years of huge electricity price hikes, with prices set to rise again this year. According to the Food Bank Queensland, many people have started reaching out for support for the first time in their lives. In January, the charity reported, "We're finding people in secure rental accommodation, dual income families, mortgage holders are also being impacted and experiencing food insecurity, sometimes going hungry, so missing a meal or going whole days without eating." This rise in the number of households experiencing food insecurity comes as inflation and the cost of living surges. Driving all of it is a steep rise in electricity prices, not to mention the insurance and also the rates. To demonstrate the scale of the problem, the Australian Energy Regulator, AER, has reported that the number of households in energy debt is soaring, with 170,547 energy customers taking part in hardship programs at the end of 21-22. That's 23,286 more than in 2018 and 19. And today, energy costs have significantly reduced the real incomes of Queensland households, particularly lower-income working households, small businesses and those living and working in the regions. And such outcomes are unsustainable and will lead to wasteful and inefficient allocation of resources over time. Deputy Speaker, Queensland today are paying some of the world's largest electricity, gas and fuel prices. Electricity bills alone have increased more than 20% over the last 2 years. Since 2009, in Queensland, the average price of electricity rose from $35 megawatts per hour, $5 per megawatts per hour, to 160 megawatts $160 per megawatt hours in 2023, and that's a 357% increase over a little more than a decade. And that's what happens when you implement policies that limit production and the use of energy. And the lifeblood of modern industrialised society. The current crisis is just a tiny taste of how painful this energy transition is going to be for Queenslanders, as well as reining in energy production and switching to less reliable methods. The government is intent on limiting and managing energy demand. The AEMO's draft 2024 Integrated System Plan emphasises the central role to be played by Australian households in the energy transition through the use of distributed energy resources. And these distributed energy resources, the DERs, are a key part of the government's energy transition roadmap, and they enable operators to strategically shift demand from peak to off-peak hours, shed demand on the grid, supply shortages by reducing consumption, in other words, rationing. Deputy Speaker, restricting or eliminating the use of fossil fuels is only going to lead to higher inflation and food prices. Every step of large-scale food production relies on fossil fuels and its byproducts. Fertilisers, pesticides are all a byproduct of natural gas production, while the plastics and other materials are byproducts of both oil and gas. Large tractors run on diesel fuel. The steel necessary for farm equipment is made using coal. Transportation fuels move the food from farm to table, and the list goes on. And there's just for the agricultural industry, Germany, case in point, in the last 2 decades managed to boost its shares of wind and solar in electricity generation about 40%, but could barely make a dent in the fossil fuel share of primary energy use, which went from 84% to 78%. The fact alone should tell you that the impossibility of what Labor is trying to do, and that's because the physical world is a lot harder to nudge than actual people. The real reason green energy has utterly failed to reduce cost, either at the pump or on the grid, is because green energy is merely adding to fossil fuels and it's not substituting them. We're duplicating the grid with a costly, inferior system. Surely it's obvious to anyone that renewables plus backup is always going to be a lot more expensive than just backup alone. The reality is, if you simply can't run Queensland's modern industrialised economy on intermittent energy, it's impossible. You're not going to. Moreover, all these new systems and technologies are being added. We're creating so much complexity it's going to be impossible to fix. Yet what we're doing? We have more and more complexity, more and more inflation, more and more energy poverty, and it's going to be more and more painful for ordinary workers and families. We currently need comprehensive review of the whole current market, comparing it with other models to see which is the best in terms of providing reliable and economic supply. Continuing with the present forward model distorted by subsidies and price caps make absolutely no sense. One question, is your standard of living better or worse under 9 years of this government? Is it going to get worse again? That's all I have to say. Thank you, Speaker.